Okay, Siyad Dishmaya number 2, Bolok. We shall try to make it efficient because there's quite a lot to talk about. First of all, it says that Bolok was worried that they will chew us up kilchoi chasher. So we said, what's this expression? Kilchoi chasher. Kilchoi chasher. What's symbolic of? And we also point out it says orali. What's this orali? So we said pshat for Bolok. You can listen earlier. The Rosh brings what's lechono orali? He says, why did he not just say lecho ora? He says because that's what he was saying. Bolok says there's a general rule. Whoever blesses Yisrael gets blessed. Whoever curses Yisrael gets cursed. Therefore, if we're going to be cursing Yisrael, whoever curses Yisrael is going to be the one that's getting cursed. And says Bolok, you're actually going to be cursing me, because whoever curses Yisrael is themselves getting cursed, and therefore, by me instructing you to curse Yisrael, I'm actually bringing the curse upon myself. So we have to understand what's this saying. Because Bolok says, Tomuz nafshim plishtim. Because that's all Klal Yisrael wants. That's all the going want. They want to destroy Yisrael. And let's take the moshel. Let's try and understand a little bit the moshel. We're going to talk about this moshel. That Moav and Midian made peace together, even though they were normally at warfare, and it's described as a moshel. Das Kenny brings a moshel like this from the Gemara in Sanhedrin. There were two dogs in a pack who hated one another, and a wolf came and attacked one of them. So the other one said, "Listen, if I do not stand by, then he will next come for me." And therefore, they went and made peace and killed the wolf together. And what's this moshel telling us? Why is it important that we're in a pack together? Okay. Let's talk about the story. The second part, when Bilams starts traveling, so Hashem gets annoyed. We'll talk a mitzvah about that, why Hashem gives him permission and then he retracts it, so to speak, or gets annoyed that he's gone. It says, that's one of the key expressions. Hashem was annoyed, because he's going. What do you mean? Hashem just told him, Im likroi lecha, kum leichitam, go with them. And then he's going, so he's annoyed. So, before we talk about this, what happened was changed. So we're going to try and try and understand that. Okay, and of course the story of Bilam and the Olsen and the Malach. The Malach appears and Bilam does not see it, but the Shur does. The Olsen sees it. And why does the Olsen see it and Bilam not see it? Because man is not given permission to see the mazikin. Otherwise, he would completely. He would not be able to maintain any composure whatsoever. He would lose. He would go completely crazy out of such intense fear. And therefore, these things are hidden from man. Whereas animals, it seems, are able to cope with this. And why? You have to understand. Perhaps because what do these frightening creatures actually represent? They are actually attacking people because they represent threats, these incredible threats all around, because we do not conduct ourselves properly. We do not listen to the mitzvahs of Hashem. We do not perform the divine will. And therefore, all these elements come to actually to attack us, to actually annihilate us completely at every turn, in every element, wherever you see them, they're there, because so great is the claim against us for not performing our duty towards Hashem as we should. The animal perhaps is slightly less frightened, because perhaps the expectations of the animal are slightly less. It has less free will. Often it comes under the dominion of people. Therefore, these apparitions are less intimidating to the animals. Whereas the people, you're expected to behave better. Therefore, if we were exposed to them, it would be overwhelmingly frightening, because the actual expectation upon us would be so over people would be so overwhelming, they would not be able to survive. So there seems to be a certain balance, and in this case, the Chamor did see it and was incredibly frightened, and Bilam was not. Bilam, the animal, the Chamor, the Osoin, crashes into the sides. We'll talk about that against the ovaries, and squashes Bilam's leg and collapses beneath him. And Bilam hits the Osoin, and the Osoin says, "What are you doing?" And Bilam says, "Because you're attacking me." And the Osoin says, "What did I do to you? Why are you hitting me?" So we have to understand a little bit. First of all, what was the claim of the Osoin? Why are you hitting me? I'm hitting you because look what you've done to me. Ki salal to me. If I would have a sword here, I would kill you. That's not the way. You're my animal. You're my Chamor. That's not the way a Chamor is meant to behave. So what was the Chamor? What was the Osoin saying? What have I done to you? And Bilam's response is, "Yeah, look what you." Zichera is correct. Bilam does not see the Malach, so why is he not justified in hitting the Osoin? And first of all, we have to understand this incredible miracle. Hashem opens the mouth of the Osoin, coming to refute completely Bilam. What is the meaning of this incredible miracle that we have here? And the Osoin comes with an argument. The Osoin says, Bilam says, "Listen, you have defied me, you have attacked me when you're meant to be serving me." And the Osoin says, "Look, I am the Osoin that has served you faithfully. I've never done anything wrong. So, and therefore what? Therefore, you should assume perhaps that I'm actually acting faithfully. I've always acted faithfully towards you." And Bilam seems to not accept that. Bilam seems to have assumed, despite the fact that the Osoin always acts respectfully, faithfully, obediently, as is expected of one's animal, and therefore perhaps we could assume that in this case that is not a rebellious act, it is not an act of impudence or anything like that, or disobedience. It is by necessity. It's acting out like this. Bilam does not seem to draw that conclusion. Bilam assumes that he is acting untowards. So you could say this is just a knee-jerk, impatient, non-thinking, selfish, egocentric reaction on Bilam's part. Perhaps, but we'd like to think perhaps if the Torah is actually bothering to engage with Bilam on any level, that there is something with what to engage. Bilam was on a certain level. If Pirkei Avos seeks to ask what is the difference between Bilam, his Talmidim, and the disciples of Avram, it seems to be there is with what to deal. So therefore one would assume if Bilam is hitting his animal and is not giving it the benefit of that, there must be perhaps some rationale that Bilam would have employed here. He would have been perhaps a thinking person. And ultimately, Bilam is shown that this is a malach. Okay, so let's go back. First of all, Kilchoich. We're going to say this whole episode is really a spiritual question, spiritual debate. We're going into the existential spiritual nature of the world, essentially, and as it relates to Klal Yisrael. And before that's sends a big jump. Let's start off. This maybe is a remez in the Kilchoich Ashur. Let's start actually the Olecha Onorali. Says the Rosh, his Moshul. He says the Rosh, Bolok says, "You cursed him for me. I'm going to be receiving the curse, because whoever curses Klal Yisrael, they themselves get cursed." And you could ask, why should Bolok take the curse? Maybe Bilam will get the curse. Who's the one who's actually giving the curse? Bilam is giving the curse. If Bilam is giving the curse, in that case, he's the one that should be subject to what the Torah says, "Mevorchecha boruch uvorchecha oru." Whoever you blesses you will be blessed, and whoever curses you will be cursed. Bilam is the one issuing the curse here, so he's the one to be cursed. And Bolok says, "I'm going to be the recipient of the curse." Why? Because it seems to me it's an act of shlichus. You're my messenger. You are performing this on my behalf. If you are performing this on my behalf, says Bolok, then who's the actual one who is performing the curse? It's considered shliach shel adam k'mo Yisoi. Therefore, it is in actual fact considered that Bolok is the one responsible for this action, and therefore he is the one that should suffer the consequences. However, we have a klal ein shliach lidvar aveiro, that when it comes to something that one should not be performing, an action that you're not entitled to do, then we do not say that the concept of shlichus, of you being my messenger, you being my representative, is no longer valid, can no longer constitute this as the action of the principal. It's the action of the messenger, of the representative, because essentially why? If you have someone of higher authority who told you not to do this, and someone of lower authority says, yes, you may do this, the person of lower authority is not entitled to instruct you to do this, to tell you to go and do this. And therefore, if you go and do it, you cannot say, I was instructed to do this by Bolok. Bilam can say, if Hashem, so to speak, does not want Klal Yisrael to be cursed, in which case, if Bolok instructs me to do it, I'm not entitled to do it just because who's Bolok to instruct me to do this? And therefore, I'm not his. I'm acting under my own volition. And Bolok is coming to say, no, you're not acting your own volition. You're acting under my authority. Therefore, I'm going to be one that's going to suffer the consequences. And why? And this actually is the root of the heart of the matter. Am I entitled? This is Bolok is saying, am I entitled in actual fact to curse Klal Yisrael? So one could say this goes to the heart of the issue, of the debate, of the question. What position do Klal Yisrael have in this world? If this world, so to speak, entitles the nations of the world to their world, and in inverted commas, and also privileges Klal Yisrael, entitles Klal Yisrael to keep the Torah, and requires the Klal Yisrael to keep the Torah, and that, so to speak, perhaps also would require the nations of the world to heed to Klal Yisrael, to heed to serving Hashem the way that Yisrael does. So which is the dominant force that obligates everyone, humanity? And Bolok says essentially this world was given permission for us, for the nations of the world, to act as they would please. And Yisrael is, so to speak, a stranger, a newcomer, an outsider in the world scene. In which case, if we want to say, Yisrael, you are sort of coming to, with your spiritual revolution, you are coming to limit and to impose your authority, your spiritual authority, or your spiritual conscience on us. You're not entitled to do that. On the contrary, we've been given rights to this world, dominion over this world, and we all, so to speak, can almost curse you. We're entitled to say, no, this has no part, you have no part, no real part in this world. That is actually what Bolok, that's going to be very much the whole theme of Bolok and Bilam trying to curse Klal Yisrael. And this is Bolok saying, we have permission. This is not something that higher authority prevents you from doing Bilam. I am the highest authority in this world. I am the king. I've been given dominion. I've been given authority. Therefore, I can exercise that and instruct you to, as my representative, to curse Klal Yisrael. And there's no higher authority that says you should not be doing that. And therefore, you can be rest assured that the curse will only relate to me, if there will be one. And we saw there's a moshel. We said Moav and Midian were a parable where two nations who were at loggerheads, sworn enemies. Suddenly they make peace, because otherwise they say, if Klal Yisrael attack us, one of us, they're going to attack the other one. And we said it's like two dogs in a pack. Why two dogs in a pack? Because you might say, why would one say, just because they attack Moav, tomorrow they're going to attack Midian? Because it seems to be that Moav and Midian are almost identical. And in attacking Moav, you're actually also attacking Midian. And why is that? That's the fear they have, because essentially because they're part of a pack. And being a part of a pack, they are almost the same, they're almost identical. And why is that? Well, what is this pack? This pack seems to be perhaps the nations of the world. We are parties to the nations of the world, and as such, we are identical. We're all members of the pack. Maybe in a large pack of dogs, you cannot really differentiate between each one. Although on a microscopic level, on a closer examination, you'll see each one's got its own unique facets and characteristics. But from a certain perspective, they're all the same. They're part of that pack. And therefore, Moav and Midian are really two nations within this pack. And why is that? Why not take the perspective of each one is individual? They've all got their own cultural heritage. They've all got their own national identity. their unique language, culture, customs, laws, even their ethnic and their pedigree, everything is perhaps unique. So why are they considered exactly the same? It seems to be because if they're a member of the family of nations, that renders them identical. Why? Because there are two forces in this world. There are Yisrael and there are the nations of the world. And then if you're a nation of the world, then essentially you're the same. There might be subtle differences, culture, etc. But these are nuances within the fundamental nature of identity, which is you are nations of the world. Why? Why is that? Why is that the view? Maybe there's many nations of the world and each one has got its own unique identity. Because primarily what characterizes them is the fact that they are not Yisrael, that they are against Yisrael. They do not identify with Yisrael. Otherwise they would become Yisrael. They would adopt completely the charter of Yisrael. And in not doing that, that is what fundamentally characterizes them. Why? Because, this is what we're saying, there is a force in the world that's called HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God's divine force, that inspires and instructs us to act in accordance with His will. And there is the right, so to speak, the free choice to not do so. And how do we look at that free choice? Can we say essentially, yes, there are two ways. You're completely free to do as you want. You can choose Yisrael, and that was given for Yisrael. And not to be with Yisrael, not to be serving a Kadosh Baruch Hu on such a level as Yisrael are expected to do, that's also a reasonable free choice. And that's what it looks like upon one when sort of views the world on perhaps a surface level, without apprehending it on a too deep a level. But perhaps on a deeper level, if one contemplates properly and takes a objective, truly objective view of the world, it's not like that at all. In actual fact, the overwhelming moral directive of a person, of any human being in this world, is essentially to serve the Creator with all his complete faculties, with all his facets, because the Creator Hashem is the one that gave life and existence in every possible facet that a person can have and has, emanates from Hashem, and therefore that is completely obligated to Hashem. And in sort of maintaining an identity, maintaining a mode of living that is not sympathetic with that realization, that's actually an actual fact, an act of defiance. And it's an act that requires essentially great spiritual energy, spiritual in inverted commas, great defiant spiritual energy, great defiant cultural. Essentially that is all the full strength of the nations is placed into somehow fooling themselves that they are not obligated completely and overwhelmingly to serve the Creator Hashem and to defy Yisrael. And since that is their overwhelming, that is where all their energies are invested, where it's cultural, scientific, medical, listening to the news, busying themselves with sports, culture, it's all a means of, as we'll see this, it's all a means of distractions, all an extremely potent means by which they can somehow they can somehow be distracted and not have to face the true reality. And that therefore colors them all as similar. They're all very similar. They're all almost really one of a pack. And everything else is this nuances, how they actually go about this, defying Hashem. And when you have two nations fighting each other, so they're locked in combat together, maybe that they're identical twins. And why are they fighting? Why are they fighting each other? Because essentially, it's a reflection of their inner nature, which is one of fighting and defiance. And these two nations are fighting each other. Essentially, their defiant nature, the fighting natures maybe overwhelmed them, and they're it's spilled over to fighting each other. And essentially it's an argument about how to fight Hashem. And therefore they're essentially extremely close. And if one of us gets attacked by this dog, the other one is also going to be attacked. And this is perhaps the Kihoy Leichu. Hashem said to Bilam, yes, you can go. But you should know this, you're essentially going against the divine will of Hashem. You're not really entitled to do this. So, kum leich, it says go, leich. Leich means maybe, okay, you can go, but go at least acknowledging the fact that this is not something that is appropriate. Go modestly, go quietly. Hoileich, sort of, hoileich means continuing. Means an ongoing, consistently, confidently, without any doubt. Nonchalantly, as if there's no problem, that's Vayicharaf Elikim. That's not appropriate. That you're not entitled to do. And the Malach comes and opposes Bilam. And why does Bilam not suspect? Perhaps this is And the also sees the malach, sees this angel, and becomes extremely agitated and scared. And Bilam hits it, because Bilam, it seems to be, why does Bilam not suspect maybe there's a malach here? Maybe there's something opposing. And this is precisely the debate. The Olsen says to Bilam, what do you want from me? Why are you attacking? What have I done to you? The Olsen is saying, the donkey is saying, I've done nothing to you. Because our life was in danger. And all I've done is, in actual fact, move to avoid a danger that was also an imminent danger to you. And Bilam viewed this, no, this is not a danger to me. I'm not the one that's actually in danger. Why? Because Bilam says, yes, there are mazikim. There are forces that threaten to attack people. But this concept that, this notion, this phenomena that we are not exposed, that man is not exposed to them, is part of, so to speak, the essential divine permission that's given to man to defy Hashem. Almost, so to speak, Hashem has hidden himself to such extent that we are not spiritually obligated. We have genuine free choice, according to the philosophy of Bilam, to defy and to ignore, more important, to ignore Hashem. And therefore, even if there is a malach here that's seeking to oppose me from cursing Yisrael, this malach, this mazik, this force, this dangerous and malevolent, malignant, whatever force that seeks to impede our progress in this, has really not got permission. Essentially, as the way the world works, it does not have permission to interfere with the divine way that's been, the world has been characterized with. The world has been given, been set up in a particular mode, with a particular dynamic, such that, yes, we have permission to ignore. We're entitled to ignore Hashem. Therefore, He has no permission, in actual fact, to do anything to us. And therefore, you, the Chamor, the Olsen, are essentially instructed to carry on. And therefore, you, in being over petrified, being terrified of this malach that's going to do something to you, you are acting improperly, you also. Because essentially you could carry on and nothing will happen to us. And ultimately this was, as we said, this is ultimately the debate. Ultimately it's revealed to Bilam, this is not just a regular malach. This is a malach, this is mamish, a representative of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that means that, so to speak, Hashem, if Hashem performs, or appears, or speaks, or orders, or inspires, that is not just, so to speak, from a particular authority. That is from the higher authority, which characterizes the whole of creation, the whole cosmos. Becomes infused with this inspirational dynamic that Hashem says, no, you're not meant to be cursing Klal Yisrael. Because Hashem says, I want Klal Yisrael to be blessed, and you're not entitled to it. That becomes really part of the fabric of creation itself. And therefore, yes, Bilam, you are not entitled to ignore this. And essentially, if you do persist in this endeavor, particularly in the manner that you are going, insistent on cursing them, then you will forfeit your life. Because it's not a malach, and this is the debate. No, the world essentially exists for Yisrael. And here we get perhaps to 2 points. This is first of all, the whole notion that the malach, Hashem opens the mouth of the Osim. Moses opening the mouth of the Osim. Now we can understand it. It's incredibleness. So it wasn't just like an action, an incredibly innovative, imaginative phenomenon that would have had the whole world talking about it. It was something that was very pertinent and very relevant. Because you, Bilam, was making a very potent and relevant point. You, Bilam, are coming to curse Am Yisrael. Is that something that's appropriate? And Hashem has and Bilam thinks yes, it's something that's appropriate. And Bolok says it's even more appropriate that I can appoint a representative to do this on my behalf. And it will be considered my action, you're not defying any higher authority. And Hashem is saying, no, you aren't defying a higher authority. You're not just defying a higher authority, you're defying the authority. You're defying, essentially, the fundamental laws of nature, of physics. Laws of physics are not just the rectilinear propagation of light, and that every force causes an equal force, and the light, nothing can travel the speed of light, and the energy converts to mass, and the mass converts to energy, etc. And the gravity is the warping of space-time. There are additional laws of physics. Namely that Hashem has appointed Klal Yisrael to represent Him in this world. They are, in performing the will of Hashem, the 613 precepts, that is part of the world, the laws of physics. That is part of the laws of the world, without which the world would not exist. If it did not have a people representing Hashem performing His will in this world, there would be no world. And therefore, you Bilam are not entitled in any way. There's no concept of you cursing Klal Yisrael. It doesn't even exist. It defies the laws of nature. It defies the laws of physics. And therefore, when you were given a mouth, permission to speak, it was not a mouth that was actually given permission. It was not created with the potential whatsoever of uttering words of curse against Yisrael. In which case, you, in insisting after you have hit this also 3 times, absolutely insisting that yes, I am going to curse Am Yisrael. How can that be? The mouth with which you were created was never given for such a purpose. There was never such a mouth created. In which case, you are obviously anticipating the creation of that. Hashem is actually using the power somehow to inspire the creation of a new mouth. That is exactly like a chamor. In that respect, you are like a donkey that has no potential, does not have the power of speech, does not have the ability of elocution whatsoever, and you are sort of creating a new power of speech. Similar to the donkey itself, there's also been given the power of speech. That is essentially what you represent, Bilam. And this is the message that's been given to Bilam, that there's no existential extant possibility whatsoever really of cursing Am Yisrael. It's not part of creation, of the creative force. And in seeking you to assert that there is such a potential, you're actually creating a new mouth, so to speak. And the Olsen comes along and says to Bilam, just have to stop the timer for a second. Getting to the heart of the debate between Bilam and the Chamor. Chamor says, "Why are you hitting me unjustifiedly?" And Bilam says, "Because you're acting completely improperly. You're acting not as a Chamor, you're disobeying me. You're defying me. You are actually you're causing me all this suffering, which is completely inappropriate." And the Chamor answers, "No, you should realize that I am not doing anything untowards. Haloi onoichi asaynecho asher ochavta olai meoidecho ad hayoim hazeh." I am the Chamor that you have ridden me from the time, let's say, you were born, and therefore what? I am an obedient Chamor. Since I'm an obedient Chamor, an obedient donkey, therefore you can assume that, in this case, I am not acting recalcitrant or rebellious in any way. I am still your obedient Chamor, and this should be proof. And Bilam says, no, Bilam does not seem to accept this as proof. And he assumes the worst, that his donkey is acting rebelliously, and disobedient and defiance. And why? Why does Bilam not accept? Why does he not assume? Listen, you've got so many years of faithful service. So you could say there's a deeper argument going on, that it says, "V'hu roichev al asoinoi." What's So we're told part of the argument of the Olsen was Haskenis Kanti. Here it sort of embarrassed Bilam very much. Haskenis Kanti, that in actual fact Bilam did not just use this donkey as a means of transportation, but he used it also as a means of his moral immoral promiscuity. That he actually used his donkey acted in some ways as his partner, his sleeping partner. So debased was Bilam. And it could be mamish literally, but it could also be, like Chazal tell us, that a person, if they ride horseback, they should not ride or niddah without a proper saddle, because riding in such a way when one's skin is directly in contact with that in the sitting position with the heat of the body warmth of the donkey can itself incite person to improper thoughts and improper actions, and to licentiousness, and it's the beginning of promiscuity. It's improper. It's not modesty. It's not chaste. And Bilam perhaps was not circumspect. Why? Because it says Sherachafta olai. I said Sherachafta olai. Olai means on me. Perhaps the Chamer is hinting to us, to Bilam. You sat on me without any intervening surface. Your body heat, your body surface, your skin was directly in contact with mine, because perhaps you wanted to derive this improper sensual enjoyment, pleasure, which is really what represents your improper nature. He himself, without any, as well, intervening, without anything, protective layers, as part of representing Bilam's debased layer. And maybe this is also what the Chamer is. Where did this come from? Why is Bilam doing this? So perhaps it says, I suggested it says, in the Makkah of Borod, at the time of the hail storm in Mitzrayim, one of the 10 plagues, the 6th plague, 7th plague, the 7th plague, Borod, and Moshe Rabbeinu comes and warns Parai, whoever is going to leave their possessions, their livestock outside, it's going to be completely annihilated by this hail, this incredibly strong hailstorm. Whoever fears Hashem will bring their livestock inside, and their servants, etc., and their livestock. And the expression uses Hayorist var Hashem, whoever fears Hashem, me avdei paroi, heinis avodov, ves mikneu elabotim, he will bring everything indoors. But whoever does not care, maybe he really is a Yirei Hashem, but he chooses not to care for what Hashem has threatened is going to happen and will happen. He leaves everything, he will leave everything outside. And the Targum Yonison says there, who's Hayorist var Hashem? Hayorist var Hashem does not mean any Yorist var Hashem, it means Eoiv. Eoiv, who is fearing of Hashem, he was one of the advisors of Parai, senior advisor of Parai. He will, in accordance with his Hashem, his God-fearing nature, he will take note and bring his possessions indoors. Indoors. Whereas Bilam, who does not fear Hashem, he will leave his things outside. And Bilam, therefore, it seems, left all his possessions outside. However, Bilam perhaps knew generally, that yes, what Hashem predicts is perhaps going to in actual fact happen. And Bilam, what did people do? They themselves, very probably, stayed indoors. Even those who did not mamish fear Hashem, they said, okay, our livestock, we have to make a statement. So they left the livestock outside. But their family, the wife and children, stayed indoors. So perhaps Bilam, in trying to save, he had this chamoyer, and this chamoyer was his partner. It was like Kemoisi, it was almost like him. It was his lying partner, almost like his spouse. Haskenis Kanti. So Bilam, perhaps during the Makkah of Shchin, of Borod, brought his chamoyer inside. Why am I saying this? That from when? From your history. What's mi'oidecho? So it says as the introduction to the plague of hail, oidecho mistoilel ba'ami. That's the only place that says in the Torah oidecho. Oidecho mistoilel ba'ami. Hine mamtir, I'm going to bring rain, I'm going to bring hail. So that's what he's saying. When did you start? It says the Chamer. We started, so to speak, having a relationship at that time, at the time of Makkah's Borod. From the time Hashem said Oidecha. And you said, okay, you don't want to lose your livestock, but you don't want to defy. You want to make a statement that you're not concerned about Hashem. So you say, what? This is my spouse. My Chamer is my spouse. And since then, you've started been using me as for your sensual pleasures. And what's his argument? This is tremendously embarrassing for Bilam, but what's his actual argument? And therefore, since you use me for this, and I, so to speak, have acquiesced in this, perhaps without choice, I have acquiesced in this, I therefore have been a faithful chamor. In which case you are to assume that, in this case, I am acting also properly and not defying you. And Bilam does not accept this. Perhaps he says it's not a good proof. Just because you have acted faithfully towards me, even in this capacity. This is why it's mentioned here. It's not stam that Chazal say this is what the Chamer is referring to, this improper sensual conduct of Bilam. Rather, this is part of the argument of the Chamer. You have acted, you have used me as a sensual partner. This shows the extent to which I have been faithful to you. I've done anything that you would want. Anything whatsoever, to the extent of even being acquiescing to being this sensual partner. And this proves unequivocally that I am not defying you. And Bilam says no, Bilam rejects that proof. Why? Because what you are doing, what you've done to me is to be expected, he says. You're meant to serve me in every way conceivable. That's what an animal is, subservient to his human master. And therefore, whatever I demand of you, I demand you to take me to plea. You're my mode of transport, yes. You're also my mode of sensual pleasure. That is expected of you. And the Chamer says no. This is not something that is expected. This is way beyond the call of duty. And this is way beyond the call of duty, and I've even been faithful in that. This must be that I'm completely faithful, and therefore you are to assume here also I'm being faithful. Bilam says no. This does not constitute an act of overwhelming loyalty. This is part of the regular conduct that is expected of an animal, of a person, in which case I do not know that you're an overwhelmingly faithful animal, in which case I can assume in this case you're acting improperly, defiantly disobeying me. What are they arguing about? This is actually the argument itself. Is this act that Bilam is using on the animal, is this something that is the animal, so to speak, is to be expected of the animal, is to be expected to use it as a sensual partner? And depends, again, Hashem said in the Torah, lying with the behemoth, this is totally improper conduct on behalf of a human being, any human being. The Bnei Noach are also being instructed in this. And therefore, this is something that goes completely, even the Chamoyer are not in any way expected to indulge in such conduct, because this has been commanded by the overwhelming authority of Hashem himself, the creator of the world. This is part of the laws of physics of the world, that man does not lie with an animal. That's what the Chamer says. That's the perspective of the Chamer. And Bilam is actually this is his whole challenge. This is his confrontation, challenging Hashem, defying Hashem, saying, no, Hashem's laws, the laws in the Torah, the moral requirements of man in this sphere are not binding on us. They are perhaps recommendations, suggestions. They are no way binding, and therefore my authority to impose upon this Chamer, even to go to such base depths, to be using for my sensual pleasure, that is something that's to be expected. There's no higher authority that can defy and decree otherwise. And therefore this is to be expected, and therefore I do not view you, Chamer, as doing something out of the call of duty. And the Chamer is saying no. And this Hashem is obviously siding with the Chamer, with the donkey, saying no. You, Bilam, are obligated, and the Chamer itself, the animals, every aspect of creation is ultimately required to abide by the moral precepts that Hashem has designated, not as suggestions, recommendations, but as fundamental precepts, the law, the spiritual laws of physics, which define the cosmos. And therefore, there's no way that this Chamer was expected to act in such manner. And this is the argument and discussion, again, repeating itself, between Bilam and the Chamer.